Hello, in lesson 2 we will learn another factoring techniques. This is a trinomial type of factoring. Now a trinomial just means that we have three terms. However, a quadratic trinomial is a special trinomial because the leading term has an x squared term in it, a middle term has an x term in it, and then there is a constant term. Now we saw in Math 1 that multiplying two binomials together with the same exponent of x and a constant in each bracket, that the result is a trinomial. And if we multiply this out, we have x times x, x squared, x times 7, 7x, and negative 3 times x, and negative 3 times 7. Now notice the middle term, we can add that together, right? So the sum is 4. So let's say we have the result and we're asked to find two things multiplied together gives us this answer. Well, notice the pattern that the leading term is x times x because this first term is x squared. Now the last two terms, or the last two terms in the bracket, they multiply to negative 21. But if we added the product of negative 3 times x and 7 times x, that gives us the middle term, positive 4. So in other words, when we have the leading coefficient 1 in front of the x squared term, that means the product of these two terms in the bracket, okay, is the constant term in the trinomial, and the addition of these two terms is the x term. So that is the pattern that we're going to follow with a quadratic trinomial of leading coefficient 1. So for this first example, in 1a, we have the constant of 15. So we need to find two numbers that have a product of 15. So if I list them on the side, and this is a positive 15, so of course we have 1 and 15, we have 3 and 5. We also have negative 1 times negative 15 and negative 3 times negative 5. Now they all have a product of positive 15. Now which one is added together as a sum of 8? And of course that is 3 and 5. So we can go ahead and write the two binomials as x plus 5 and x plus 3. And you can always do a check when you factor, right? Because it's the opposite of dividing. So if you multiply it out, you should get the exact same answer as at the beginning. Now it doesn't matter of the order. A lot of students ask me, does it matter if the x plus 3 bracket is first? No, it doesn't. The order of a product doesn't matter, as long as it's an alphabetical order or the coefficient of the term or the constant of the term is in front. And in this case, it doesn't apply. Okay, for example, 1b, be careful, we have a positive product but a negative sum. Okay, so let's list all the quantities or factors of plus 30. Now sometimes there's a lot of factors, but you can see the pattern there with 11, right? Because 1 and 30 is not going to apply, and negative 1 and negative 30 as well. There's 2 and 15. Okay, so that's positive or the negative. And there's 3 and 10. Okay, and there's also 5 and 6, because that's the answer. The negative 5 and negative 6. So I include the negative here because the product of two negative numbers gives a positive number, and we need a negative as the sum. So of course the two numbers are -5 and -6. Okay, and again, multiply it all out just to make sure that it does result in this answer here. Okay, for C, of course, I did mention in the previous lesson that always look for a common factor first, because this is not a quadratic trinomial, but if you take out a common factor of x, okay, the remaining part in the bracket is factorable. Now, you don't need to put a third bracket because there's three things multiplied together. So the leading term is x squared, so that's x times x. Now these two numbers multiplied together is +4 and also adds to +4, and that is +2 and +2. This is a special factor. It's actually a perfect square trinomial. You can either leave it like in this format, or you can take it one step further and square the bracket since it's multiplied by itself twice. Okay, now we're just going to take it one step further and add another variable, which is squared at the back. So notice the first term is x squared just like before, but the last term has a y squared, and the middle term is an x times a y term. That's because it is a product of two brackets together, which the second term just happens to have a y, a multiple of y. It's still the leading coefficient 1 in front of the x squared, so it'll be 1x times 1x, but not necessarily 1y. But it's still going to be solved in the same way as the number in front of the y squared. Okay, the -8 is still the product of the two numbers, and -2 is the sum. Okay, now we just have an y at the second term, okay, in the bracket. So list all the multiples of -8. So that means one factor has to be positive and one factor has to be negative. So 8 times -1, or -8 times 1. There's 2 times -4, or -2 times 4. So which one has to have a sum of -2? And that, of course, is -4 and +2. And it doesn't matter which one you put first. I'll put the -4 first, and that'll be a -4y times +2y gives a product of -8y squared. Okay, again, you can pause the video and try the practice examples on your own. Okay, and then you can view the results in a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and just factor these last examples here. For A, there's no common factor. So we have x times x is x squared. And -7 times -8 gives +56 and a sum of -15. For B, we have a common factor of 4x. Make sure you take out both before factoring the rest. Now the remaining is a function of z, so we still can factor this quadratic trinomial with a leading term of z squared, so that's z times z, and the two numbers are -7 and +3. Now C has the leading term of a squared, so that's a times a, but the last term has a b squared in it, so that's something b times something b will be 20b squared. So those two numbers are -5 and -4. because if you add them together, that'll be a negative 9ab. Okay, d has no common factor. And the last term here is a constant. There's no second variable. Now the two numbers that multiply to positive 9 but adds to negative 6 is negative 3 and negative 3. So you have the option here to square the bracket, okay, or not. It's a perfect square trinomial. Okay, for e, there's a t squared in the front, so that's t times t. Okay, an s squared in the last term. Whoops, there's no square here. S times s. Okay, so those two numbers you're looking for are positive 4 and negative 3. And for the one, we have x times x is x squared, and negative y times positive 5y gives you this product, but adds to positive 4xy. Okay, so again, try the homework in the textbook. This is not to be handed in. Okay, it's for you to practice. So especially if you've never factored before, it's very important just to keep practicing, and we'll do some together in the live tutorial.